Welcome to Proven and Probable. I'm Maurice Jackson. Today we are proud to introduce Genesis AI, a company revolutionizing the way we manage and protect our natural resources through artificial intelligence.
I'm Brent Tomy. I'm the Project Director for Genesis AI. We're developing some real-world applications using artificial intelligence and machine learning to address real-world problems with digital technology. So the use cases for the carbon module would be an auditor who wants to ensure that what they're investing in makes sense. It could be a verifier looking at MRV technology, wanting to verify from a remote perspective that the forest does actually exist, what the growth models are actually showing versus the map that we see in the various carbon formulas, comparing it to different standards so that you can model the outcome, whether you're choosing to be an IFM project via Verra or Gold Standard or the American Carbon Registry. So really seeing what the differences are in the calculations. So project proponents would use this tool to analyze their own projects. And of course, we'd love to see end users understand the technology. So if you are a large company that has a carbon footprint they need to offset because of their unreducible nature of their business, then you can invest in technology that helps you really keep the genie in the bottle, as it were. Traditional forest carbon projects, they may have lots of boots on the ground samples. We're matching that with remote sense data via drones, LiDAR, orthophotogrammetry, RGB to come up with an active model of what's going on in the forest so that we can accurately predict what the carbon value of these projects really are. And it's about authenticity, it's about integrity, and it's about creating something that has trustworthiness and transparency baked into the product. We're passionate about building carbon projects because we believe that trees are the lungs of the world, but that we need better technology to ensure the integrity of these projects. People have heard a lot about the exposés vis-a-vis The Guardian, talking about the efficacy of various carbon projects, how they don't deliver as advertised, and that's where our digital transformation technology comes head to head, and we can actually verify those claims.
Joining us for a conversation is Brent Tolmie, Project Director for Genesis AI. Mr. Tolmie, thank you for joining us today, sir.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Well, it's a pleasure to speak with you today to introduce Genesis AI, which is quite an intriguing investment proposition. Before we delve into company specifics, sir, please give us your background on what brought you into this groundbreaking opportunity.
Sure. I'm fourth generation in the woods, so I grew up in the forest economy of British Columbia. And that led me to realize that we could do things different / better from a management perspective. So over a career in natural resources, I've flirted with the mining industry, was involved in the renewable energy sector on the hydropower side for about a decade, and then got into connecting in buyers and sellers sort of off the side of my desk, and had a bit of a career with an accounting firm on sell-side M&A advisory, as well as succession transition issues. So really familiar with the natural resource space. Again, grew up in forestry, but have been able to understand many different aspects of natural resources, including mining, particularly on the aggregate production side of things, again, as well as hydropower. So what brought me here? I just believed that there were issues that we needed to solve in the natural resource sector, and that all of these tools that are developing, whether it's AI, machine learning, remote sensing, could actually make a big difference in the capital allocation, that we could perhaps spend less and get more by using technology. And I saw it in forestry. We were early adopters of a technology called LiDAR, which of course people are familiar with. It wasn't as well known probably 10 years ago when we first started using it, or for myself, the first project I was involved with LiDAR was over 20 years ago. And then using photogrammetry, so high-res pictures of the Earth, basically to start thinking about what things are, whether they're biological assets, trees, looking at projects differently, as well as just bringing that all together. So back when Google Maps or Google Earth was called Keyhole, we were using that. And so I've always had this sort of desire to see what's out there to do things different / better.
Well, you have quite the pedigree, sir, and your skill sets are germane to the task at hand. Now, let's put that theory into application. Mr. Tolmie, please introduce us to Genesis AI and the exciting opportunity your company presents.
Appreciate that. Genesis AI was set up to do exactly that, which is disrupt the natural resource sector in mining, in commercial forestry, and how we think about wildfires and how communities interact with green spaces and how they manage their biological assets, whether that's parks, wetlands, oceans, rivers, things of that nature. Pulling that all together and using the very best in data science and then using machine learning and artificial intelligence to essentially get more by spending less. And so it's a full service data platform, and we've bucketed it out into 5 different modules so that we can focus with each piece of technology and applying solutions to those various sectors. So we just really identified there was 5 key places where we felt that we could make a difference, and then that's where we would spend our effort and our resources building out products that people actually want and need.
I see that. Oh, yes, sir. Go ahead, please. No, go say it. Go ahead, sir.
So, and then that's the key, is that there's a lot of talk about AI. We're all familiar with the ChatGPT. Perhaps you've wanted to draw a picture using a tool like Midjourney. We hear about AI every day. We're the guys that are looking at it saying, okay, well, we understand natural resources. So how do we take that technology and apply it and actually come up with solutions to real problems? So we stepped out, saw the problems, and then saw how we could address those with AI-driven solutions.
Yeah, you somewhat alluded to what my next question is I see that Genesis AI utilizes software as a service modules, also known, is that pronounced as SaaS, sir?
It is.
Can you share with us what exactly is SaaS?
Yeah, so I think we all use SaaS in our daily journey. We're on a Zoom call right now. Zoom is a SaaS product, so it's software as a service, which simply means I develop a solution and then I ask you to support my solution. You don't buy my solution. In fact, you license the use of it. So every time we go on a Zoom call, you're paying a monthly fee for your Zoom package. They might try to sell you upgrades if they're useful to you for group calls, presentations, but Zoom is a great example of a SaaS tool where it's sticky because it works well. So people will always give that $20 a month or $50 a month, or in our case, a lot more, because you're actually providing them with value. And that's really versus one-off company-specific development. So maybe if you worked in a bank or in a mining company where there's an old school database, a way of processing checks in a bank, for instance, that was probably developed by a software engineering team, and it's proprietary to that company, and it can't be sold or licensed to other companies. And so our goal really is to build products that suit the needs of many, so that we can create that repeatable revenue stream, which leads to healthy returns for investors. Other examples of SaaS companies, again, ChatGPT or its parent company, OpenAI. That's absolutely a SaaS product because you pay a monthly fee to license the use of it. And in general terms, we all know probably Salesforce as a CRM module. Salesforce is one of the best SaaS companies out there. Microsoft Office, licensing O365, SaaS company, Google Suite, all those little monthly recurring fees. And even in a way, Netflix could be considered a SaaS company where it's that annual recurring revenue. So once you've acquired the customer, you really work hard to deliver value to them so they'll stay on your platform and continue to pay that license fee.
Well, let's get up to date on what the company is doing now. I recently saw in the news that we're your first of 5 modules, GeoHarmony, has been released, and we understand this platform is applicable to the mining industry and that you currently have one company already under contract utilizing the platform. What part of the mining cycle will this technology be applicable, and how will it benefit mining companies?
That's a great question. GeoHarmony was the first of the modules for us to kick out the door. So the thing about SaaS development is first you have to have an idea, then you have to build out a team, then you have to build out what we call a production schema, or how we're actually going to go through step by step. And then we develop a piece of it. You have to iterate. You develop a database, you intake all this information, and then you start to segment it into useful ways. Then you start to apply machine learning and AI to that. And then you have to give people tools to work with. So it takes a long time in the background where there might not be a giant news cycle in software as a service development. There actually is a lot going on, and our team is working tirelessly and just about around the clock to get these products out the door. So GeoHarmony was the first one we were able to kick out that's good enough customer facing, because we never want to sacrifice on quality. So we've got it out the door now. What it is a data search and download tool. And if I step back, you don't work with Devron Hawa very long and talk about AI and machine learning and how it can address perhaps issues in the mining exploration sector before he says, aha, you should be working on mining solutions too. And so we took that to heart and have been able to leverage his expertise and those in his circle to really help influence the product that we're building. So that was really the genesis of that build. But it's similar to tree science and biological assets in that they all exist in an XYZ axis in the planet, sort of a latitude and a longitude, and then a vertical distance, either subsurface or above surface. So when you're measuring trees, or you're thinking about what rocks look like, or perhaps what's under the hole or under the earth in the hole, you could take that same sort of thinking and apply it. So we weren't too afraid of taking that on, and we managed to recruit some people who had a real background in mining and geoscience and turn them loose, as it were. So the GeoHarmony was our test to see if we could take an incredibly large data set and translate it into a product that's useful for many clients. So we started with the Athabasca Basin, which many will know is a very productive and perhaps one of North America's most productive uranium deposit zone. And it's where companies like NextGen and then Cameco and of course I think Dev's exploration company F3 is active there, as well as SKKR and NextGen and many others. And so we said, well, there's this great data set that's publicly available from the government of Saskatchewan, where everything that's been digitized back to, I believe, 1908 has been uploaded. So we requested all those files from the government of Saskatchewan, and we've now uploaded them into a system. Of course, data is neither here nor there. It's just going back and forth. It's ones and zeros. It's when you actually start to contextualize that data, you turn it into intelligence. And intelligence is what can actually lead to better efficiency in mining, better targeting, better use of that information. Perhaps if I'm an exploration company, I'm looking at expanding my property. I want to know what's out there, who's been there before me, what are the results. And so all that information was basically just floating out there unstratified. So we take it and we actually build tools to stratify it. So when you think about Athabasca, we've taken in close to 3 terabytes of data. And if you think about that visually, every terabyte is about 85 million pages of documentation. So we've digitized about 250 million pages of information and put them into a system that we can now search, we can download, you can sort by geochem, geophysics, what am I interested in, what region, what area. And now we're starting to layer on maps. So you can go out and say, all right, here's my property, or here's where I'm interested in. I want to see what data is available for what's beside it, to click on that and start to see all the results, and then to be able to filter out what I'm not interested in. So it's all about speeding up the exploration process. In Canada, as around the world, we spend an immense amount of money on mining exploration, and we don't actually find that much. So that's about efficiency of capital. So we're really trying to move the needle in best money spent, best bang for the buck. And so that was our version 1.0. We're working to have a second release on that product where we continue to innovate and try to add more value to the customer. And we've got some clients interested in that product because obviously uranium is important for energy transition, and it's got a lot more cachet. And I think a lot of the hesitation towards uranium has gone away in recent years, where we struggled to actually meet power demands and shift away from hydrocarbons. So we're expecting good things from Athabasca, but it really allowed us to prove out our model one step further. And I don't want to get too technical, but a lot of this is in PDF or portable document format. we're training AI models not only to extract that, and people might say, well, hey, I can extract a PDF with Adobe and different products on the internet. What's so proprietary about that? The tools that we're developing can actually recognize what's in that PDF and then immediately tag it and put it into the right category. So when I go to search it, I'm not just getting a bunch of PDFs that are looking for keywords, geochem or downhole or things of that nature. But the AI is actually recognizing what that is and then properly classifying it. And so that's really exciting when you think about searching through 250 million pages sort of representation of data and actually be able to find that hidden needle in the haystack quite quickly. That's a tool worth making. And of course, it applies to other regions. And so you start with one problem, you solve it, and then you can rinse and repeat into other jurisdictions.
Well, I have to ask you, 250 million worth of documents, how long does it take to upload that information?
Yeah, it's a bit of a chore. And even that, you actually end up building code and writing some scripts to actually pull that out. So taking information in is a whole chunk of work in and of itself. And again, that's why you don't hear a lot of news from us or haven't, because we've been, since November, since we stood up the team, we've been working on even implementing or grabbing data and getting it into what we call a data lake, so then we can start to pipeline it into contextualized intelligence. Takes a long time. So we've been working at it for a few months on and off, but really about when you get that data, it can be representative of many data sources in the world. So instead of just brute forcing it into a system, we actually want to build tools that automate that process. So it's solving little problems all the way around to a deliverable product, which we're pretty excited about. So it's helpful. We send hard drives to the government of Saskatchewan. They sent them back to us fully loaded. We sent them back again, and on went the cycle until we've had the full data set. So even solving a problem like that is a challenge, but getting it all so that it actually is in a cloud-hosted environment where many can access was a challenge in and of itself.
Now, you referenced clients. What is the market potential for GeoHarmony, and is there any competition?
We think the total addressable market in AI is huge. It is a massive multi-trillion-dollar industry, or predicted to be. And we can see that in stocks like NVIDIA, that's a darling right now of the stock market. It's simply because NVIDIA is producing its picks and shovels. So it is producing the hardware that companies like us rely on. We do a lot of work in Amazon web servers. So they were actually stood up racks and racks and racks of NVIDIA and other computational equipment that we then rent. So they're really picks and shovels, but we see how much value is being driven from OpenAI, and a lot of these other AI data startups are really starting to pick up headwinds. We're a little bit more focused on who the clients are in the natural resources sector. So when we think about Athabasca, we know there's 28 to 35 active companies. We'd like to secure 2, 3, 5 of those clients to buy our products. So a really realistic figure in terms of what we can derive. But that's just one particular segment of the mineral exploration business that is global. And so you think about all the opportunities, in lithium, in cobalt, in copper, in gold, in moly, and all the things that we need to improve and enhance our lives. Those are tools that we can build and translate into other industries. So we think it's actually a very large market. Canada, of course, is a great place to work, but we're friendly in other jurisdictions. So we've been taking a hard look right now in some of the mid-south states where there's a lot of historical data that is completely untextualized, just out there, sometimes in bankers' boxes, hasn't even been turned into PDFs. So we're starting to talk to folks like that in jurisdictions like Wyoming, where, of course, uranium is popular, in the gold-rich fields of Nevada, Arizona, where we can actually have an impact by taking all of this information, the 250 million documents, or perhaps maybe less or more, who knows, getting them into our system and then being able to actually resell that access to folks who really want to demonstrate to investors that they're using AI as an advantage, that this isn't just vaporware, a term that we use in software development. to represent something that's just a bit of a wing and a prayer, but that we're actually solving problems and actually speeding up the efficient use of capital, so that investors can feel good about putting money into these companies, and that board of directors, CFOs, CEOs realize that this is giving them a competitive advantage over brand X. So huge market opportunity. And again, rinse and repeat is our strategy. So, and the way we do that really is that we've built what is akin to, think about building a Costco. So it's a building, it's a parking lot, it's got a shipping and receiving, it's got a back end, it's got a front end, it's got a place for employees, it's got bathrooms, and it looks similar to a Walmart or Home Depot or things of that nature. And that's really what we've sought to build, is something that's very standardized, so that we can then take any data set in and plug it in, fill the shelves essentially. And whether we're stocking lawnmowers or putting in some freezers to hold the milk and dairy products, it doesn't really matter, because now the shelves are built, now the coolers are built, everything's there. So if it's uranium, great, we know a thing or two about that now. If it's lithium, fine, let's go to another jurisdiction. Let's find where that information is. And if it's working with a specific company and they have their own information, even better, because that's more granular. And the more granular we can get, the better results we can provide on enhanced targeting, on finding out what they missed on the needle in the haystack. And then, of course, the front end of that store, the retail environment where we park, where we pay our money, we think of that like a dashboard, which is, I have all this information, that's fine, but how do I actually have tools to use that? And we worked a lot with geologists to understand what actual tools do they want, what's important to them. Do I want to turn this filter up, or do I want to, sort of control that noise a bit to find the exact result that I'm looking for, so that they can apply their vision and thinking, as well as our information and our ability to refine, to finding more efficient use of capital, which ultimately returns shareholder value.
Now, you referenced standardization. Is GeoHarmony the foundation for the 4 other modules, or do they have to start from ground zero?
No, exactly right. So we think of these data problems, jumping back to my example of everything being on an XYZ axis. So I know where it is on a latitude and longitude basis, and I know where it is on a vertical axis. And that same database works, doesn't matter if we're talking about the stratification of underground mining data on voxels, or we're thinking about biological assets like trees, which frankly are a bit easier because though they're growing and there's factors, exogenic and anthropomorphic factors that influence their growth, we can know them. So we can drive right up to a tree, we can wrap our arms around it or our tapes around it, we can hit it with a laser to see how high it is, those types of things. And it all goes into that same database that we designed, thinking about mining very similar, just that instead of being above ground, we're underground.
Now, GeoHarmony is active. When do you anticipate the other 4 modules to become active?
It's a great question. Right now, we're closest. Next release will be something for the tracking of carbon offset projects, which is very interesting because it really measures the performance of a tree. And so we're looking to actually kick that out the door at the end of March, beginning of April. So that's pretty exciting because it's actually surprisingly technical in its nature. And what we did is we built a tool that projects that are looking to get stood up can actually input a small amount of data and then get actually a useful report that tells them what they need to do to move to next steps. And the carbon offsetting industry, it's a multiple billion-dollar industry right now. So we're looking to sort of take the pain away from establishing products. There's about 40 different pieces of algebra that go into developing a carbon offset. So we've actually automated that. I will say it's been a challenge. It's been a bit of a head scratcher at times. So we're excited about that. That's a very specific market segmentation that dovetails into my background and a lot of the folks that I've interacted with over the last 4 years. So we're excited about that one. However, we are pushing very quickly into a Wildfire product. And I think that's incredibly important based on what we're seeing right now across the planet. And what we saw last year, we're headquartered in Kelowna, British Columbia. West Kelowna, of course, a large percentage of it burned. Many people lost their homes. And so we're looking at sort of from a post-mortem view, what did we get right? What did we get wrong? And then developing AI solutions to address those issues. And we see a lot of room for improvement. And of course, when we go to repeatability and the opportunity in the marketplace, from an ethical perspective, we know we need to pour the gas on that project to get there quicker. So we're looking to have some fairly sophisticated wildfire tools out the door, perhaps as early as May. And it's something that, again, in data science, you spend a lot of time thinking about how to address a solution and then what specifically the market needs. Where are the gaps? Who's doing what well? Who do we want to compete with? Where do we think there's room for improvement? Or perhaps where things aren't being done at all. And that's what we've really focused on. There's a couple other modules. One is commercial forestry. We're working right now on a beta project with a client to get that out the door. Essentially, that addresses the inefficiencies in the current sampling methodologies. So if I'm a forest owner, I actually really want to know what I have from a biological asset perspective. How many trees? How fast are they growing? What are the risks to those trees? So as you can appreciate, a lot of that dovetails back into forest carbon. It dovetails back into wildfire, because if I have this digital thing and I can model it, then I can really understand what the impacts are, what I can do to protect on a wildfire basis, what I can do to maximize my return on a carbon basis, what I perhaps might consider if I were to cut that tree down and turn it into a product for a marketplace, that type of thinking. And then just quickly to finally address the last module is how we think about biological assets and how they relate to communities. And a lot of that is in wildfire. But again, communities need to know, based on how the planet's been a bit hotter as of late, how they can manage their biological assets. What is it going to take from a management perspective? What is it going to take from a water perspective? What are the things that they need to do to essentially make the earth good and habitable for us people who are actually a lot more fragile than the planet?
With the introduction of any new disruptive technology, there's always ambiguity. Could be fear, it could be greed, it could be promise. I'm just curious, how has the public and private sector responded to the platform's preventative capabilities?
That's a great question. We've had the opportunity to demo in the mining and forest sector. We've been well received. People are obviously hesitant at first, because if you're not an adopter of technology, sometimes this whole concept of digital environment, AI tools, being more efficient than typical geological mines, it can be scary. And so we're looking for folks that are progressive and open-minded. And once we've been able to demo the capabilities of a GeoHarmony to say, look at all this data that we synthesize, folks that know how hard a problem that is and how expensive that is, immediately get on board. So that's led us to a few trials, and we're working right now with customer data to prove that our solution is efficient. And we think that's actually the best way to gain success, is to basically find a client who's open-minded, to take a small piece of their data, show them some great value, and then be able to demonstrate that as a case study and a testimonial to other folks. And that's really been our go-to-market strategy, which is to deliver value in a small way so that we can leverage that into other relationships and say, hey, look at what we did for company XYZ. Would you perhaps be open to that same solution? Because we can move the needle on capital efficiency, which I know boards and CEOs are always interested in. And for shareholders, that can translate into EPS, which I think is always the goal.
I can just see, this is from my perspective here, the ESG element here cannot be overlooked. I mean, I can just see every company, many companies, if not every, utilizing or want to utilize your technology. You want to speak on that a little further? Because I think that's the hidden element here, basically.
It is that there's a lot of smart people working on solutions, and it's that aggregation of all the information so that we can consider it quite quickly in real time. But I think that's the advantage of AI. When we think about computer science, a lot of what we're doing isn't actually revolutionary in terms of the actual data. There's smart people that have been studying this stuff for decades. What we're doing now is harvesting their research and actually turning it into code, so we can take the best minds in the world and actually code up what they thought about things and then run those computations very quickly. And I think a great analogy is, we all know about IBM and their big computers, Watson, when it beat Kasparov, the chess player back in the 90s. That was a seminal moment where we know that the machines are actually able to, defeat this great chess mind. So some gold companies went looking for that, and they took that information and said, hey, we want to use this AI to look at where we could find what we've missed, or perhaps load up data sets and start to analyze them. And it cost billions of dollars, and it took a very long time. Fast forward a couple of decades, now we have the advent of NVIDIA, what they've done, and we're able to actually harvest that cost of compute relatively inexpensively. And because of the way they've adapted new sort of graphical processing units, a different type of computer processing, we're able to actually do that relatively quickly and relatively inexpensively. So we're just taking good known theories, applying that to large data sets, and then being able to move through that very quickly at a relatively low cost. And I think that's the value for most companies in the natural resource sector, whether it's forest carbon, whether it's forest management, whether it's mining solutions. They're going to be wanting to look at these tools because we're just able to do so much more. And I think a great way to look at it is, we're smart guys. So if we locked ourselves in a room with some of the finest minds in geological science and started to comb through all 2.8 terabytes of information that we brought in from the government of Saskatchewan, we'd be there for a very long time, perhaps the rest of our lives and then some. And I don't know that we would have come to any great conclusions. Contrast to have with putting it into a database where you could search and then apply good scientific theory to that information. We can do that quite quickly, perhaps in a matter of days, weeks, months. So again, it's just looking at the old information and processing it in new and quicker ways that are less expensive. And that's really what we've seen in good AI data science, is that the leaders are able to outpace the conventional way of doing things, which just equates in savings.
Now, Mr. Tolmie, we've covered a lot of ground today. Last question, sir, and that is, what did I forget to ask?
I wanted to talk a little bit about Wildfire.
Please do.
I think we touched on it. The cost of wildfire is something that we're very passionate about addressing. I was looking at a Senate report that was looking at the past fire season. And of course, we've got these active, huge fires in Texas. The tragedy in Maui last year that I was able to tour firsthand and saw the tragedy and the damage. And they're just getting back on their feet now. And of course, there's good people that are out doing analysis in Hawaii right now, as well as California, and the ongoing issues they've had. And of course, where I live in Canada, we evacuated an entire town, the city of Yellowknife, moved all the residents out because of the threat of wildfire. And we can all think back to the oil-producing town of Fort McMurray a few years back, having to be evacuated, and the loss of lives, the loss of homes. So, and it's a global issue in Australia, in France, in Spain, in Mexico. It doesn't matter where you go, it's touching everybody's lives. That Senate report said that the cost last year was somewhere between $394 to $893 billion in economic burden. So whether that was loss of economic generation through businesses having to close or temporarily being shut down, the cost of energy production, as well as the direct impact to people's lives, health. We think about that, think about the smoke in Quebec that was going down right down to New York City. And of course, New York saying, what are these Canadians doing? Where is the solution? So we thought about it a bit differently. We think there's people that are doing great work in wildfire fighting. There's great work in early detection to get those crews, those rapid attack crews, out faster. Where we've really focused is on that theory that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. There's never enough money to put into wildfire protection. We just simply can't spend our way out of the problem. So what we need to be doing, and the solution that we've developed, is really about where is my best bang for my buck? If I'm going to create a front line of defense, where can I create impact that will hopefully deflect and get that wildfire through my area quicker? Wildfire is simply a function of three things. You've got heat, you've got fuel, and you've got oxygen. We can't control the heat or the oxygen, but we can certainly control the fuel. And so we really looked at taking that AI and developing predictive analysis on, if I only have so much to protect my community, where do I put it in? And what type of treatments do I use? Is that creating a barrier, i.e. a fire break? Is that the removal of horsewoody debris around my property, around the property adjacent to me? Is that thinning? Do I need to get rid of some of the trees? Is that spacing? Giving a little bit more light and therefore the fire to go through faster? Do we need to conduct some preventative burning like we see in drier states where they'll go out and actually scar fire ahead of time? So we're again removing that fuel, things like that. And so if we look at communities that maybe they only have a budget of $250,000 or $50,000, where do they best spend that to make the most difference in terms of defense against wildfire? And so that's really what we focused on. And we're beginning to work on a few proposals with some resort communities that are really sensitive to this issue, and really getting into the weeds here, but developing a crowdsourced way of gathering information from people who visit those spots. And being able to use predictive analysis around what they're seeing. So if they're taking pictures of hiking trails or flying their drones, that's information that we're collecting and beginning to layer analysis on top, as well as providing our own sort of proprietary analysis to see, hey, where can we solve this issue? Because if you're spending $400 to $900 billion a year just in the U.S. alone to address these issues, we don't have to move the needle very far, and that represents a great return not only to society on the ESG front, as you've described, but also return to our investors.
Oh, Mr. Tolmie, I could just listen to you speak for days. This is quite intriguing, and I'm sure I'm speaking on the behalf of many of our audience members. For someone that wants to learn more about Genesis AI, please share your company's website address.
Yeah, we're on the web at genesisaicorp.com. And keep a lookout as we develop the modules. We'll be adding decks to each module so that folks will be able to download and get specific information on one of the 5 modules that they're interested in, as well as continuing to update. We've got some great videos on YouTube that sort of describe the process overall. And we're also on Twitter at Genesis AI Corp, sharing out information on wildfire and mining innovation, things of that nature. Trying to educate something that ends up being sometimes a tough and hard to understand concept, and trying to break it down into things that really our investors can be thinking about, or if companies are interested, they can be taking a look at us without having to contact us. But we hope they do reach out, because we enjoy engaging with customers, learning about their projects and helping to provide solutions that they may not have considered, that can really help them move the needle of how they spend their capital and the return they can generate to their investors.
And what is the ticker symbol for Genesis AI, sir?
Yeah, we're on the CSE at AIG.
Well, Mr. Tolmie, it's been a pleasure speaking with you. Wishing you and Genesis AI the absolute best, sir.
Thank you for your time. It was great.
The information presented on Proven and Probable is provided for educational and informational purposes only, without any express or implied warranty of any kind, including warranties of accuracy, completeness, or fitness for any particular purpose. The information is not intended to be and does not constitute financial, investment, or trading advice, or any other advice. You should not make any financial, investment, or trading decision based on any of the information presented without first undertaking independent due diligence and consultation with a professional broker or competent financial advisor.